specialized in sports nutrition, women's health hormones, and gut specialist. The topic that I have for you today is about Macro 101. I really love this topic because we hear a lot of things about macronutrients in the internet. However, when we dig into it a little bit more, we realize that maybe there are a couple of details that we might lack. So I want to create like the base of nutrition so that you understand fully what are macros, which ones are better to consume, which ones are better to avoid, and how you can then include this into having more stable glucose levels. Okay. I want to be this as interactive as possible. I'm here with you. You're not here just listening to me. So just make sure that whenever you have a question, whenever you want to jump into the topic, just ask a question and we'll go over them. Okay? So I'm going to start sharing my screen so that we can talk a little bit about macros. Okay? Okay, so we're going to go into macros 101. The first thing that we're going to talk about is why they are called macronutrients. Okay, so there are two different types of nutrients. We have macronutrients and we have micronutrients. So macronutrients is because we need them in bigger amounts. Okay, whenever you think of macronutrients, which are carbs, proteins, and fats, you normally think of things that you consume in large quantities: rice, chicken, avocados, nuts, seeds. However, when you think of micronutrients, micro means small, so micronutrients are things that you need in small quantities. So for example, vitamins and minerals, whenever you think of vitamins and minerals, these nutrients, whenever you consume them externally, for example, like in a multivitamin, they come in small pills because you don't need a lot of them. Okay, so that's why they are called macro and micronutrients. Okay, so that is the distinction that I always prefer to make in the beginning. As I said before, there are three different types of macronutrients. We have carbs, we have proteins, and we have fats. Okay, those are the big three macronutrients that we need. All of them are essential. However, the quantities might rely depending on your conditions, on your activity levels, age, goals. They might vary, but they're always going to be needed. So for example, a very common misconception, for example, is in the keto diet, that people most likely think that you don't eat carbs. This is not true. Whenever you are in a keto diet, you are in a very low carb diet, but you still consume certain amount of carbs. You never eliminate them completely because your body still needs some carbs in order to function properly. Okay, so remember the three macros: carbs, proteins, and fats. We always need them together. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about carbs. Okay, so there are two different types of carbs. We have simple carbs and we have complex carbs. What is the difference? The difference is they're all going to provide the same, they're going to have the same end or the same function in the body. They're going to provide you with energy. Okay, the difference is how fast that energy is going to be provided. So for example, simple carbs, think of them as molecules that are on their own, or they might be in pairs, but they're not going to be very long strands of carbs. Okay, they're going to be simple molecules of carbs just floating around. Okay, what happens since they're single molecules of carbs, you eat them and the body doesn't need to process them. It's like, no, they're already processed, I'm just going to digest them or absorb them. So what happens, that is when the sugar levels go up. Okay, simple carbs, they tend to be, for example, refined grains, white sugar, white flour, anything processed, cookies, pastries, baked goods. On a side note, fruits are also considered a simple carb. However, I always like to make the distinction of simple carbs with no nutrients, like the ones I just told you, and simple carbs with nutrients, like fruits. Again, fruits are good, but since they're simple, you need to be careful for them not to spike your sugar levels. Okay? Now, complex carb, on the other hand, they're strands of carbs linked together. So since they're very long strands of carbs, what happens? That the body needs to start cutting each one slowly, one by one, in order for you to absorb them and digest them. Okay, so what happens? Instead of creating a sugar spike like the simple carbs, you're going to have a more stable glucose release. Okay, complex carbs, they are usually found, like for example, in brown or black rice, legumes, beans, lentils, chickpeas, quinoa, oatmeal, all of those that are less processed, they're going to be better for your glucose levels. So again, instead of providing a very huge sugar spike like simple carbs, they're going to provide a steadier glucose release. Okay, so the first thing is that whenever you need to include carbs, you don't need to include them, but whenever you do, just make sure that you go complex over simple. Okay, so for that, I have a little exercise. So for example, out of these four, which ones do you think that are going to be considered simple? If you've guessed that white bread and fruits are simple, you're right. And then lentils and oatmeal are going to be complex. So remember, complex over simple, because complex are going to have a more steadier glucose release. Okay? Moving on to the next topic, which is fiber. Fiber is one of the most important parts of the carb. It is what makes simple carbs different than complex carbs. Okay, so complex carbs are high in fiber, whereas simple carbs are usually very low in fiber. What happens? That fiber first is like the broom in our body. It makes sure to start sweeping all those glucose molecules or all those cholesterol molecules, all those triglyceride molecules away from the body. So it sweeps everything that you don't want in your bloodstream. But fiber, since the body cannot digest fiber, it has two very important roles in the body. Three. The first one is that since you don't digest them, it's going to help you fight constipation. Okay, so the more fiber that you have, or the more fiber that you eat, the less likely you are going to have constipation, the better bowel movements you can have. Now, remember that whenever you increase fiber, since your body doesn't digest it, it needs water. So whenever you include more fiber in your diet, just make sure that you also add more water to your diet. What happens? For example, if you have a tube and you have a cotton ball and you put the cotton ball in the cotton ball is not going to pass through the tube on its own. However, when you have the cotton ball and you add water to it, the cotton ball is more likely to pass through the tube. Fiber is going to be the same. If you increase the fiber, but if you don't increase the water, instead of helping you fight constipation, it's actually going to prevent the opposite effect. It's going to create more constipation. So remember, as a general rule, more fiber, more water. Okay, that's the first benefit of fiber. The second thing that fiber does is that since your body cannot digest it, it stays longer in your stomach, creating a higher level, a higher fullness level. So what this does is that whenever you feel fuller, it means that you're less likely to start snacking on other things. And it means that whenever you reach to your next meal, you're less likely to be as hungry as you would with an empty stomach. So this means that you can create, or you can have smaller portions, which leads to a caloric deficit. Remember that a caloric deficit is eating fewer calories than your body needs, which can increase the chances of weight loss. Okay, so the
Sorry,
benefit
one
of fiber.
from the audience. One of our users is asking, where did sugar, this is more regarding the previous slide, where does sugar alcohols fall, simple or complex?
Okay, sugar, interesting question. Sugar alcohols, they're kind of simple. they are very different in the body. So for example, sugar alcohols, they're a molecule that the body doesn't fully digest. What does this mean? That, for example, for every gram of carb that you eat, you get 4 calories. For sugar alcohols, you get 2 calories. So it reduces the amount of calories by half. So it is still going to be a simple one, but it's not going to be to cause the same effect as white sugar because it doesn't have the same amount of calories. Okay, because since it's a sugar alcohol, the body doesn't digest it. It's like whenever we have like the scale of sugars, we have full sugar, which is going to raise your sugar levels very high, sugar alcohols, which might increase your glucose levels in the middle, and then we have like stevia and monk fruit or Splenda, which the body doesn't fully digest, so it's not going to create a sugar spike. Okay, so it's kind of simple, but it cannot be compared to white sugar because it doesn't have the same absorption in the body. I don't know if that's a little bit clear. If not, let me know and I'll go back to it. I was in fiber. Okay, the first one fighting constipation. The second one was we were talking about the fullness levels, the second one, and the third one, which brings me to the thing that we were talking about, is having more stable blood glucose levels. Okay, so what fiber does is that since your body cannot digest it, it creates, instead of creating like a high sugar level, it's going to help those simple carbs that you eat get released more slower. Okay, so that is one hack that can help prevent your sugar levels from spiking. So for example, if you eat a fruit on its own, it's going to have a very large glucose response because it's a simple sugar. However, if you combine, for example, a fruit with a vegetable being very high in fiber, very low in carbs, it creates, instead of making this fruit have a very high glucose spike, it's going to help lower it a bit. So it is like a buffer for your sugar level. Okay, so fiber is one of the buffers that we can eat whenever we're having like a carb food to prevent from our sugar levels from spiking. Okay, protein. Protein is important in our body because it helps support muscle mass. It helps increase fullness levels because the body takes a little bit longer for it to digest, so it releases food slower. And the third one is that since the body needs to burn a little bit more energy to take advantage of that protein, it can increase your metabolism, making you burn a little bit more calories. Okay, there are 2 types of proteins: animals and vegetables. There is a vast difference between them. They're all good, but it's always good to understand the difference between animal and vegetable proteins. Animal proteins, proteins are made up of amino acids. Okay, so think of it as a pearl necklace. Each pearl is going to be an amino acid, and the chain or the necklace of pearls is going to be the protein. Okay, what happens that in animals, animal proteins, we have all the essential amino acids that the body needs. There are some that the body can produce, so they're called non-essential. There are some that we need to have through our diet. Animal sources, they tend to have all the amino acids that we need. That's why they're called a high quality protein or a complete protein. Okay, the difference is that vegetable proteins or vegetable sources, for example, legumes, lentils, chickpeas, beans, rice has but a small amount, or corn has but a very small amount. The highest in vegetable protein are going to be legumes. So what happens that vegetable sources are considered incomplete or low quality proteins because they don't have all the essential amino acids that you need. So you might be getting some, but you might not be getting all of them. Okay? They're still good to include, but they cannot be compared to an animal protein. So in case that you ever want like a vegetarian or you follow like a plant-based diet, what people normally do, it's called a complementary protein. What happens that, for example, rice has some proteins, beans has some proteins, so whenever you mix them together, they complement each other and give a full set of high quality protein. Okay, this happens whenever you mix a grain like the rice with a legume like the beans. So that is how plant-based people that follow a plant-based diet can get all the essential amino acids that they need. Now, whenever you follow a plant-based diet, remember that these are carb sources, so you need to be careful because they can spike your sugar levels, so you always need to consume them in moderation. Okay, so protein, good for muscle, good for the metabolism, and good for increasing fullness levels. And there's two different types, animal and vegetable sources. Protein, remember that fiber was a buffer for preventing your sugar levels from spiking. The second buffer that we can consume is protein. Since protein tends to take longer to digest, it is also another very powerful buffer to prevent your sugar levels from spiking. So again, if we have the apple, for example, and we want that apple from preventing to increasing our sugar response, what can we do? We can add a vegetable, but if we don't add a vegetable, we can add a protein. So for example, you can have an apple with some Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt is going to be very high in protein, and that combination, instead of producing a very high sugar spike, it's going to produce a more stable release. Okay, so the two buffers that we have right now, it's fiber and proteins. Fats. When it comes to fats, we need them in the body. They're going to be essential because they help produce hormones, they help produce a lot of chemicals, and up to a certain point we need some fat to help keep our organs safe. Okay, there are going to be two different types of fats. We have saturated fats and we have unsaturated fats. What's the difference? Saturated fats, they tend to come from mostly animal sources. There are some exceptions, but mostly they come from animal sources. So here we have butter, we have ghee, we have sour cream, we have mayo, we have cream cheese, like high fat meat cuts or cheese. They're very high in saturated fats. While the body does need some saturated fats, the problem arises when we eat too much of them. Okay, so try for them not to be more than 10 to 20% of your diet, hopefully less than 10%, but the fats that you consume should come from unsaturated fats. What happens when we eat more saturated fats? It might increase the risk of heart disease. On the other hand, unsaturated fats, they tend to be healthier for the heart, and they tend to come in vegetable sources. So here we have nuts, any type of nuts, cashews, peanuts, almonds, walnuts, Brazil nuts, any type of fats, and its products. So for example, almond milk or peanut butter, cashew butter, anything that derives from them. We have avocado, we have oils. So for example, we have olive oil, avocado oil, we have seeds too. So chia, flax, hemp seeds, they're always going to be good. And again, any oil that comes from them. There are a couple of exceptions. Unsaturated fats can also be found in fatty fish. So for example, salmon or tuna, any fatty fish is going to be high in unsaturated fats, so those are good to have. And coconut oil tends to be more of the saturated fats. So I always advise that the coconut oil is good. It has very good health benefits, but just try to have a little bit of variation between a coconut oil and olive oil and avocado oil, so that you also get all the nutrients from each different oil. Okay. Now, fats, what is interesting about fats is that it is the third buffer for preventing your sugar levels from spiking. So again, vegetable was the first one, protein was the second one. Fats is the third buffer that is going to prevent your sugar levels from spiking. So if we go back to the apple, remember that it's going to spike your sugar levels on its own. If you don't want to include the vegetable, or you don't want to include the Greek yogurt, you can always include a healthy fat. So for example, having the apple with some peanut butter or some almond butter together, the fat is going to prevent your sugar levels from releasing very fast. So instead of creating a sugar spike, it's going to create a more stable glucose release. Okay, so those are the three main types of buffers that you can eat along with a carb to prevent your sugar levels from spiking. So that is always my advice that I always give to my clients. Make sure that whenever you're eating a carb, even again if you consume small amounts, just make sure that they always have one of those three. It can be one, it can be two, it can be the three of them together, but minimum there has to be one of them to prevent your sugar levels from spiking. Okay.
Two questions from the audience.
Sorry?
One of them is there a difference between vegetarian and animal-based protein and how much they can be absorbed?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to stop broadcasting. Hi. Okay. So yeah, difference of how much it absorbs. So like I was saying, animal proteins tend to be better absorbed and a better function in the body because it has all the amino acids that the body needs. Okay. Vegetable sources, they don't have all the amino acids, so they might not provide you a high quality protein, so you might end up needing a little bit more. So for example, to create like a high quality protein, you will need to consume 1/3 of a cup of rice with, for example, 1 cup or half a cup of a bean. Okay, that is going to provide you the same amount and the same quality protein as 1 egg. Okay, so there is a difference, and the problem arises that with plant-based diets, you do need to be, it's possible, but you do need to be careful because for you to obtain the same amount of protein, you need to increase the carbs, and if you're not careful, that can produce high sugar levels. Okay, so yes, there is a difference between proteins, vegetables, and animals. Animals tend to be higher quality because it has all the amino acids or all the nutrients that the body needs, and vegetable sources, they don't have all the amino acids or all the nutrients that the body needs. Okay. I don't know if that answers that question.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep it interactive while, and then there's going to be questions at the end as well. So apologies. There's another question. What is a healthy amount of nuts?
Okay, so a healthy amount of nuts depends on how many calories or how much active, what your age, your weight, your goals you have. However, I usually recommend keeping it small because it's very easy to overeat with nuts. They're very yummy, they're crunchy, they're salty, so it's very easy to have a jar and just eat them all. One of the portion sizes that I typically recommend is putting it like in the fist, not like this, but a little bit closed. So whatever fits here, 1 or 2 portions of this is probably enough for one snack. Okay. That might represent like one of these is like 10 almonds, like 20 peanuts, all of that. I usually don't count them. I recommend just portion it out with like a closed fist, more or less. Again, one or two can be enough. Don't overeat them. Just make sure that you portion them out, because if you have them out of the bag, it's going to be very easy to overeat, and that's where the weight tends to go up.
That's about all the questions now. I don't know. I believe there were a few slides left in your presentation.
Nope, that was it. It was finishing with the carbs, with the balancing, making sure that you have fats, proteins, and carbs whenever you, fats, proteins, and fiber whenever you have a carb. As a recap, one of the things that I usually tend to create an analogy in order for you to understand a little bit more the macros is whenever we link it to a house or building a house. So, for example, once you have the foundation, what is the next thing that you need? You need building blocks. So, when it comes to building blocks, what do you think it's going to be one of the macros? The building blocks in the body is going to be the protein. So that's why they're always going to be important. Make sure that they're hopefully at every meal, they're going to be the building blocks to build that house. Okay. Once you have that, those building blocks, what else do you need? You need something to glue them together. So what is going to glue them together? What is going to glue them together are the fats. Okay, you need a small amount of fat to glue them together, but you don't need that much. Okay, the same applies to our body. We need fat, but we don't need a lot of it. Okay, once we have like the walls, what else do we need? We need a roof, and we need like some windows. So the roof and the windows are going to be the micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, which prevents like foreign things from entering our body. Okay, that's why we always need them. And finally, what do we need for the house to run? We need energy. So that's why we need carbs. We don't need to have a lot of carbs. We just need to have a small amount for it to provide us with the energy that we need. Okay, so whenever you link it to the house, that might be a little bit easier to understand whenever you're having macros. Again, I like to explain macros because it makes it so much easier whenever you're going to build recipes or snacks or things, to make sure that you always, if you have a carb, a protein, a fiber, and a fat, should always be along the carb to prevent your sugar levels from spiking. I don't know if there are any questions. Okay, I have, again, please, what percentage of your diet should be protein? Okay, I'll go with that one, and then I'll go with that second one. Okay, so the amount of protein, I typically don't like to recommend it based on a percentage. I grab it in grams, and then I convert it into a percentage. If we're talking basic percentage, 20 to 30%, it's a good percentage. I usually do it by body weight. So for example, if it is between 1.2 and 2 grams of protein per kilogram. Okay, so for example, if you weigh 80 kilograms, which is around 170 pounds, more or less, you would need 160 grams of protein tops. Okay, simpler method, 20-30%. It's a very good intake of protein. Usually, whenever you want to control sugar levels and you want to achieve weight loss, sometimes the higher the protein, the better, because again, it increases the metabolism, it increases your fullness level. So I usually tend to go a little bit up in the protein so that it's a little bit easier. Let's see the second one. What are good healthy snacks you recommend? What are the snacks I can have to increase my daily protein? I am a vegetarian, and I usually are usually low in daily protein. Okay, snacks. So healthy snacks, always think of the protein first. From there, you go and think of everything else you're going to add. So for example, good protein sources, Greek yogurt, eggs, cottage cheese, um, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. You can have a protein shake, and okay, those are like the four main ones that I usually recommend: the Greek yogurt, the protein shake, the cottage cheese, and the eggs. So from there, you can start thinking of things that you want to have. So for example, for the Greek yogurt, a very good snack is going to be the Greek yogurt. You can add like have a cup of berries, which are low in sugars. They won't spike your sugar levels as much. And you can add like some nuts or seeds. So you can add like 1 tablespoon of chia seeds or hemp seeds or nuts of your choice. So you have like a parfait type of thing with Greek yogurt. That is one snack that you can have. You can do that with Greek yogurt. With Greek yogurt, you can also create like yogurt bars. So what you do is that you grab like the Greek yogurt, you mix it with a sugar sweetener. You can add some raspberries and kind of mix them up. You put them into a pan with some wax paper, and then you spread it out evenly. You put it into the freezer, and then you have like a type of yogurt bark that is going to be high in protein. You can also add a scoop of protein too. That way it increases the protein even more. And with Greek yogurt, you can also do savory things. So for example, you can do like a tzatziki type of dip. So what you do is mix Greek yogurt with cucumber, dill, lemon, and garlic, and then you can have that with some veggie sticks, and that is going to be very high in fiber, and the veggie sticks are going to be very high in nutrients and fiber, so it's going to be a very good option. That with Greek yogurt. With eggs, you can always make them a healthy version of deviled eggs, so you can make them with Greek yogurt too. You can have just hard-boiled eggs on their own with maybe some nuts. That is always going to be like a very good snack. The third one, which was cottage cheese. So cottage cheese, you can have them in several ways. You can have them like in a whole grain toast. Just make sure that if you're going to buy a whole grain toast or a whole grain anything, at least it should have 3 grams of fiber, not less, hopefully more. If not, you can just put them into some cucumber slices, and then you can put the cottage cheese on top of the cucumber slices, and then you can just dress them up with some herbs, put some salt, pepper, some garlic powder, or some chili powder if you like it a little bit more spicy, and then you have like bite-sized cottage cheese. For those of you that are not vegetarian, you can do this too with tuna. But if you're vegetarian, with cottage cheese is a very good option. With cottage cheese, you can also, instead of cottage cheese, you can also have low-fat mozzarella with some cherry tomatoes, a little bit of olive oil, some basil, and then you have like a caprese salad, which is very easy to have and very delicious. And with cottage cheese, you can mix it up with fruit. So some people have it like with some cantaloupe or some other fruit of your choice that can increase your protein intake. And the fourth one, which is a protein shake, you can always have it like with coffee. So you can have like a high protein coffee, a high protein chai tea, a high protein drink of your choice. That's always going to be like the backup answer or the backup choice. Those are for the animal sources. For the vegetable sources, you can always have chickpeas or edamame, and you can put them into the air fryer, slightly toast them until you have them crunchy. You can then put them any herb or spice of your choice, onion powder, garlic powder, chili powder, or whatever, and have them as a crunchy snack that is going to be high in protein. Just remember, chickpeas and edamame are carbs, so you do need to be careful about that. Okay, so that is like the vegetables option, or you can always have hummus. Again, measure the portion size because it's very easy to eat on hummus and it's high in carbs, so be aware. Okay, the other question that I have is carbs in quinoa and chia seeds, simple or complex? Okay, quinoa is a complex carb, which is a very good complex carb to have. Fun fact about quinoa is that, remember that I told you that vegetable protein is not as high quality as animal? There are two exceptions to this rule. So soy is a very high quality protein. Quinoa is the other high quality protein. So quinoa counts both as a protein and as a complex carb. Okay? And with chia seeds are also a complex carb, but with chia seeds, the thing is that it's mostly fiber. So in the end, it doesn't really give you a significant amount of carbs. In the end, it's pretty much fiber and healthy fats. So it is a very good option to have if you're on a low carb diet. You can have you can make a chia pudding, which is a very good handy snack, which you can then put a scoop of protein powder, and that can make it higher in protein. Or you can have it as a breakfast. You can make it overnight and have it ready to go the next day. So chia is a very good option to have. And I think I am done with the questions.
I don't see any more questions. Thank you. Thank you. This was really good. Appreciate all the answers and really great slides you gave here. And I believe next session we thinking of doing some sort of cooking.
Yes, we're going to cook. So I know that, like, the snack question, I know that's a very common question people have of doing healthy snacks. So yes, next session we're going to cook together. So I wanted to first create like the macros so that you understand whenever we cook why we're adding certain things, on how to balance everything, so that you know like how to make exchanges, or how you can create your snacks on your own. But yes, next time we're going to cook.
Alrighty. Thank you everyone for joining. We're going to have, I think our next session is on Wednesday. And then I'm going to put the date for the next cooking one with Brenda in the app. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Brenda. And I guess it's kind of belated. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, guys.